Here we are, another episode of the Preserving Wisdom podcast. I'm here with my friend Tom Coleman, who I'll give you a little intro. I know Tom as a father and a husband, a doctor, an extreme athlete, a writer, and just a genuinely good guy. So Tom, thank you so much for your willingness to sit down with me and have a conversation. Thank you for welcoming me to your home and your office here. I'd love to get started.
Well, you're my friend, man. Keep flattering me. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. You're very kind.
Yeah, thank you. So the format is typically almost autobiographical. So I'd love to, get a feel for your childhood. Where'd you grow up? What was family like? How were you in school? Let's talk about some of the early years.
Right. I grew up in Wellsville, New York in 1942. During the war, right after Pearl Harbor, around Pearl Harbor, and a lot of the men were off to war in the Army in my small town. My father worked making steam turbines for the Liberty ships and the aircraft carriers and the destroyers. My mother, where some people say she took one look at me, had a nervous breakdown, and she was sent to a mental hospital.
Wow.
I was a difficult birth, and she spent probably around 2 years in the mental hospital, psychiatric hospital. She figured she had probably over 100, or maybe way over 100 shock treatments. She didn't remember.
Wow. And this is the 40s?
This was in the 40s. That's what they treated you. That's how they treated you in those days. She died young, of course, of Parkinson's disease. I think it was brought on by all those shock treatments and maybe the antipsychotic drugs. Maybe I'm not sure which one she took.
Sure.
Anyways, so I grew up in a Lutheran church. It was full. It was packed to the gills. They had 3 services. Yeah, the first service was in German.
Interesting.
And
did you speak German as a child? Could you understand any of that?
No, but most of the people there did. We went to the English-speaking service. I didn't have a mother, and my father didn't have the money to get a babysitter, so sometime the neighbor would come over. But she'd lock the 3 of us, and he'd feed us in the morning. He would lock us in the room in the nursery where there were 3 cribs. And my brother was 3 years older than me. My sister was a year and a half older than me. And he would lock us in, and when I was an infant, and he would come back at noon and feed us. Give me a bottle. I was newborn, and that happened for a long time. I can't believe I'm even in my right mind, because children need stimulation, and the only stimulation I got was my brother beating me up and torturing me for many years. I forgive him, My sister spent all the time in my crib holding me and nurturing me. I think I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my sister. It was rough. And Dad would take us to church every Sunday. He didn't have any money. So my sister, of course, was the one before, so he would put me in a dress. I had blonde hair, so I was good looking, and
you still have nice legs. I'm sure you'd look good in a dress today.
People thought I was a girl because I had these nice lacy dresses and everything. And when I was a baby, you don't know the difference.
Sure.
But when you get older and people think you're a girl, it gets confusing. Church was full. We had a kids choir. We had a full kids choir, a full teenage choir, and adult choir, and it was just bustling. I was clinically depressed. I probably had what you might call anaclitic depression. That's when you don't get any nurturing, because my father was not a nurturer. He was more like a Marine Corps sergeant. God bless his soul. I was hyperactive. Children were taken to church, even infants, and I wouldn't shut up. When I was little, I would cry. When I was bigger, I wanted to crawl under the pews, and I was uncontrollable. And my father couldn't do anything with me because I was out of control. That's why I became a psychologist.
I was going to ask. I mean, and that might be later in the conversation. But do you have a history of mental illness? Like, did your mother's parents, did your grandparents on that side have some history with mental illness prior to that?
Well, I mean, my grandma, her mother, rarely ever said anything. Her German husband, he ruled the roost. I mean, that's what it was in those days. Men ruled. On my father's side, my grandmother there was bedfast my whole life. And then she died young. So I don't know whether she was mentally ill. Everybody kept us away from that grandma. Yeah. So it was, the women didn't do well. And I think it was an oppressive environment. That's my guess. My father grew up on a farm, so you have as many kids as you can because you got to plant the corn and pick the beans and everything. So you want as many kids. So he had quite a few kids, but she stopped when she went bedfast. I think maybe that was the reason, but I don't know. Anyways.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff going on at home at a very young age. How was your school experience as a child?
Well, just to say something, I was out of control before school, and I didn't feel love. I didn't have a clue what love was. Because my brother was very aggressive. My sister did show me affection and tried to raise me as best as a child could do. But I was so out of control in church, I might start crying.
Okay.
What happened was, an old farmer, just an old poor farmer, came down from the balcony, who sat on the balcony all the time with his wife Frida. His name was Albert. And he said, "Miles, can I sit with your child? Can I have your child for the church service?" And he said, "I can't do anything with him. You can have him." And so he took me by the hand. And he took me up on the balcony, and he sandwiched me between him and his wife. He scratched my head and played with my ear. And every child needs to be touched, and nobody touched me nicely. And I just sat there, mesmerized. I don't think I'd be alive today if it wasn't for that man. He turned to me at the end of, I was just an infant, but I remember this. He says, "I have a cow. Do you want to go ride on my cow?" I said, "Yeah, I want to ride on your cow. Can I go home with you?" And I went home with him, and I could stay as long as I want, and Aunt Frida would just cook for us and everything. I was welcome in his house. And he led the cow around the pasture, and I sat on its back, and I was just as happy as be, and he'd show me how to feed the chickens. I think he saved my life.
Mm-hmm. Did he have children of his own?
They were grown. Sure. They were gone. They moved away, so he was lonely, and his wife. So he took me in, and I stayed with him. A lot of times I'd say, "Please, take me home this weekend." I'd stay with him a lot of weekends. There were no other kids around. He just had a farm. But I played checkers with him when I got older. He always beat me, never let me win. That's okay. But you could see, that's where I learned love.
Yeah. He
would pray before every meal, and he would read the Bible. I mean, that's why I'm a Christian today, because of him. My father was a good Christian, but he just didn't know how to raise kids.
Yeah.
Some people just don't know how to do it. Then my mother came home, and she was a very grade A student in high school, but I think that it affected her intellect. So she was always complaining about physical illnesses and stuff after she came home from the mental hospital, and she was always depressed. She died young. She died maybe age 50. My brother was very aggressive, so when he went to grade school, which was a block away, Martin Street School, he would get in fights all the time. And so when it came time for me to go to school, I had no clue at the time. The kids didn't like him. So the third graders were waiting for me. They said, Jim's brother is coming to school. So somebody pointed me out, and I got the biggest thrashing of my life first day of kindergarten, because they couldn't beat my brother up because he was huge. He was 6'6" or 7" as an adult, so he was always at least twice my size. I'm 6'1", but anyways, he was always twice my size, and so I was terrified to go to school. I hated school, and I had ADHD, which probably was a symptom of neglect. I didn't do very well. Well, when I was 6, I was limping around the yard, and when I was 3, I got locked in the trunk of a car. My brother and his friends locked me in the trunk of a car. I have no idea how long I was in there. Finally, the owner of the car came, and my hands were bloody from trying to get out. And I was traumatized with phobia.
Sure.
And I was terrified my whole life of close places and dark places. I tried to tell my father, but he told me to suck it up.
Semper Fi. Toughen up.
Semper Fi, yeah. Anyways, so I didn't do very well in school. When I was 6, another disaster came. I was limping around the yard, and to make a long story short, a neighbor lady grabbed me by the ear and dragged me home and said, Miles, she set me up on the table and said, Miles, your son is in pain. Oh, he's just making that up. He just wants attention. She said, no, feel this. And she felt in the back of my leg, and my father did, and there was a bone tumor, the size of a golf ball. He said, oh, we got to get him to a doctor. And so they sent me to a doctor. He said, oh my God, it's growing. Maybe your growth plate is coming up and coming through, but it's going to pry your knee apart. And it was really, really a lot of pain. And so they sent me to the hospital in Rochester, New York, all alone. And I was in a wheelchair. I was there for over a month. Just about every bone doctor in the Northeast probably came to see me, and they walk away shaking their head. They said, we have no clue. We've never seen anything like this. We have no clue what to do. Finally, my mother's doctor said, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to take it out with a hammer and chisel. Something's got to be done. And he said, it's gonna fuse, or it's gonna be a mess. He's gonna be in a lot of pain. If you want, I can fuse the knee.
And you're 6 years old?
I was 6 years old. Yeah.
And what year is it? It's the 50s now, right?
No. This was 1947.
Okay, so still early.
Just at the end of the war. Soldiers were coming back to town. It was a rough tumble town because these were soldiers and their kids were pretty rough. So going to school was quite a problem.
Yeah.
But, he took it out with a hammer and chisel. He said, do you want me to fuse it? Do you want me to? He said, your leg is going to be semi-useful. It'll probably hurt you the rest of your life. And we got to do something. I'm going to destroy just about all the cartilage and everything in there. Just taking it out. I've got to do that because it's growing. If it's cancerous, you'll wake up with a leg with a stump at your hip. If it isn't, it'll be semi-useful. It'll be at least 3 or 4 inches shorter than the other, and that's the way it is. So I woke up with a cast, and I went to school on crutches, and of course the kids had a heyday trying to push me over, but thank God I learned how to use a crutch as a defense mechanism.
He's got a weapon now.
Yeah, but the teacher, my second grade teacher, looked at me and says, "You flunked school, so you're going to have to repeat it." So I repeated that grade, and she was rough. She used a rubber hose on us kids. Those days were no joke. Corporal punishment was very common. So
Public school, though?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, she would drag the kid into the coat room, and you'd hear bang, bang, bang. I was so petrified. I daydreamed out the window. I was so petrified of getting dragged in there. But I have a feeling she used to hit the walls too, just to scare us, because we were perfect little angels generally. So anyways, and she went to my church.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I saw her on Sunday. Anyways, she was an old maiden. When I mentioned it to years and years later, they said, "Is that Mrs. Coleman?" I said, "Yeah." "How do you know?" "Oh, she was very punitive." I didn't do very good in school, but I didn't flunk any more grades, and I went through school. It was kind of a lackluster thing. Finally, my father got enough money, and he bought me a bike, which pissed my brother off really bad. So he punched me in the stomach quite a few times and took my bike because he couldn't have one, and he figured he deserved one because he was older. But my father... so anyways, I pedaled that bicycle a block until my knee couldn't stand it, and then I'd do another block days later, and I'd push it, and finally I loved that little red bicycle, and I'd ride all around town. You couldn't get me off it, and my knee got better.
Despite the doctor's warnings and
then I felt like I had enough mobility. I said, "Dad, would you get me a basketball?" So I went to the grade school and played basketball with myself, and then we get some kids in the neighborhood together, and we play basketball, and I'd limp around as best I could, and I could shoot, but I couldn't maneuver very well. But my knee got better. If it hurt, it got on the bicycle, and I'd ride until it got a little better, and then I go back and play basketball. And I got really good at basketball. And my knee got better. Fast forward, my father didn't know anything about intramural basketball, but I played in the playground. I even shoveled the snow in the winter. I just loved basketball. And the pain went away, and then I got maneuverability, and then they had tryouts for a freshman team in the high school. I thought, I'm not going to make it because I didn't play intramural ball, but I'm going to go try. I did pretty well, even though those kids have been playing basketball for years in the town teams. And so I made the team. I made the freshman team. But then my knee kicked up because I was trying too hard, so I had to stop. I rode my bicycle and I exercised my knee. And I got on my knees every day and I said, "God, heal me. Heal me from this knee of mine. It hurts so bad." And he did. It got better. It still hurts sometimes, but most of the pain was gone. So the next year I tried out for junior varsity in school, and I made it. I was on the first team. if I started limping, the coach took me out and let me rest. But I played most of the games, and we had a winning season. I was a pretty good shot.
I would say, I
wasn't the best.
What position did you play?
No, I didn't know how to dribble as well as the guys that had played, that lead ball. Yeah, so I was under the basket. Because I was getting tall.
Yeah, good rebound.
And I could really haul in the rebounds and pull the fouls. And I was a really good foul shooter because that's what I did when I was alone on the basketball court. I just shot fouls, and eventually I won the county championship for foul shooting because I was so good at it. I made the varsity basketball, and we were the best. I wasn't the best. I was close to second string. I was a good rebounder, so the coach liked me. Plus, I was very good. If he told me to shut their best shooter down, I could do that.
Blanket him. Yeah.
And I could dunk the ball now. I was the only one on the team that could slam the ball down into the hole. And I'm only 6'1", so I had to jump.
That's why I'm 6'1". I could never junk. I could touch the rim on a good day, but that's it.
I leaped off my good foot, so it didn't re-injure my bad foot.
Yeah.
Well, when we were out just practicing during a game, I found out that if I showboated and dunked every time, they put their best defensive player on me, which the coach didn't mind, but I didn't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I didn't showboat too much during the game because I just got the rebound. He kind of pooped it in, even though I could dunk it. I could dunk real high and just kind of slam it down. I got really good. My left leg got so strong that I was a high jumper. And I did very well, got a lot of ribbons and stuff. And I ran 200 meters, 100 meters, and high jumped in high school. And I did very well there.
Is that where your love for running began, you think, high school?
Try being crippled and then come away from being crippled. Yes.
Yeah.
There, you got it. It's overcompensation.
In the opening scenes of Forrest Gump, when he's in the leg braces and then he starts running. Yeah. It sounds very reminiscent.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's me. I was at Forrest Gump. Yeah. No question about it. My grades got better too because I wanted to go to college. I found out about college. I still went over to Uncle Albert's house and ate Aunt Frida's cherry pies and stuff and told him I loved him and that I was grateful.
Yeah.
He was an old man. He loved me so much. He became the janitor at my grade school. He asked to be He was a janitor, so I go down in the boiler room and slept with him during the day or after school while the boys were still waiting around until they went home. He was a wonderful man, a good Christian man. That's why I'm a strong Christian now, because it works.
Yeah.
But anyways.
It's amazing, and I know as a professional psychologist, and met with many people, you don't have to be a father to be a father, right? Like you don't have to, you can just love people, right?
Yeah.
It takes a village.
Well, he was a father. He was a father to me.
Yeah.
He knew how to nurture.
Yeah.
My father didn't, but he was a good man too. He was moral. He was a boss in the factory he worked at, and he hired and fired people and held them accountable. And sometimes he'd have to go to one of the aircraft carriers and fix the steam turbine on it during the war and after the war, because keep it running.
Sure.
So, anyways.
Yeah, so take me to school. So you're finishing up high school, you have an interest in college. Did you know what you wanted to study when you first went, and where'd you go?
I was either going to be a minister or a psychologist because I had a phobia, remember?
Mm-hmm.
I was still terrified of, and so I was looking for psychology books. There weren't many psychology books out there that I could read, but I devoured everything I could, philosophy. I learned how to read, and I love autobiographies of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. They were role models that I had, and my favorite was Lewis and Clark, and their adventures. So I wanted to be an outdoorsman. And my father was kind of an outdoorsman. He took us to parks and hiked with us and stuff. He wasn't a bad guy. I don't want to paint him as a bad guy.
Yeah.
He did the best he could.
That's right.
So, anyways.
I just finished reading Undaunted Courage.
Okay.
The Lewis and Clark expedition.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a history book, so it was like 500 pages. It was not a page turner, but very interesting.
Yeah.
Like very detailed. Actually, if I think of it, I'll give it to you before you go. But
I read every book on Lewis and Clark. I never got never got tired of it. I read every one.
It's incredible.
And I just admired that. I said, I want to be like them, But I wanted to become a psychologist because I wanted to get rid of this phobia. I couldn't. I'd freak out if I was locked in an elevator or somebody. My brother used to sneak up on me and lock me in closets, and it would reignite my phobia. And he'd love listening to me screaming and crying.
And do you think he did that intentionally, knowing that that's the thing that would get you?
Yeah, but I forgive him.
Did you have that type of a relationship throughout your life?
No.
Did you guys ever get closer?
No, we became the best of friends.
Yeah.
When I had the house in the country, he came a lot. He loved he didn't hike or anything because he got injured in an automobile accident, so he was kind of crippled. He liked being with us on Christmas. No, we got along fine. He was a good man. He raised 2 kids, and he was good to his wife. So
it's amazing that any of you got out of that situation early, right? Mom not around, dad trying the best he can, but not always available emotionally. Do you think that part of that upbringing made you the person you are today? Do you think that led to some of the determination you have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think the reason why my brother was aggressive is here was 2 children younger than him, and the neighbor ladies or the church ladies would show us more attention than him, and he was jealous, which I understand. He needed affection too. And if I raised rabbits, and one time some kids got in, and she had a litter of a dozen babies, and then she got pregnant again because some kids got in and broke my rabbit hutch, so she got out and the male got loose. They let the male out too. She got re-pregnant. Well, to make a long story short, my grandfather said she's going to die as soon as she has those babies because her body won't be able to take it. She's raising all these babies, and now she's going to have more. And she did. She died. Those rabbits, the reason why I bring this up, those rabbits became so aggressive. They were always kicking each other and fighting and jumping at each other. They wouldn't even bite each other.
Yeah.
The lack of a mother. I had to feed him with a baby bottle. My grandfather and I fed him with a baby bottle. A little teeny dolly bottle. We had to make it into a baby bottle. That's how we kept them alive. But they were the most aggressive of rabbits I've ever seen. Normally, rabbits are not aggressive. And I think that's true of humans. A lot of times, kids that are abused or are neglected often become angry. They turn their pain into anger and blame people and become aggressive. Mm-hmm. I think that's why
hurt people.
Yeah. I was happy because my brother got, for a while, my brother got in a fight in high school, and he was sent to Cordia prep school, and so I was alone in the house with my family. That was so nice, peaceful. I didn't have to worry about getting locked in a closet. Then he came home because he got in a fight there, and they sent him back home. But he wasn't there. Then he went off to the military.
I think it's good for some young men without direction, needing some guidance. It's one of the regrets I have having not served. The whole family, grandfathers on both sides. Dad was in the Navy in Vietnam, and my stepdad that just passed was in the Navy. And just the way life worked out, I never wound up serving. I went to college right after high school and kind of never looked back.
Well, I don't think I could have killed anybody, but I was a very good hunter. My friends and I were very good marksmen, and I went to the city hall, the fire station, every week and practiced marksmanship, so I could really hit the bullseye. And I have very good eyes, so I got full of myself, So I'm thinking, even my father wanted me to join the Air Force. I said, I'm a good marksman, Dad. I'm not realizing that the North Vietnamese put bounties on the snipers.
Sure.
Yeah, and they were the first ones that they would look for to kill. But you want to hear another miracle?
Yes.
I was having nightmares because I was wondering, I don't think I could have killed them. I went to my doctor and he said, you're healthy, I'm not going to give you a deferral. And my father was really mad at me that I wasn't joining the Air Force. I was going to school. I went to NYU. I went to Concordia College, the same one that had the prep school that my son went to, or my brother. But they had a 2-year college there, so I went to that one. It was inexpensive for my father to send me. And I played basketball and ran track in college. Yeah.
Did you do, with the track, did you do long distance then too, or did you like the sprints?
No, I like to sprint.
Yeah.
I like to jump. I couldn't do that as a kid. I limped around most of my childhood. My knee was so much better. I prayed for it, and actually my worst knee is not the one that got all the. This was my good knee.
Yeah, probably favored it. Yeah,
probably because I favored it. Yeah.
So go back. I cut you off. You were talking about not getting any medical exemptions.
Right.
To serve, and your dad was disappointed, but you were in school.
Right. So I went to the doctor, and he gave me a quick examination. He said, I'm not giving you a deferral. I said, okay, whatever. They had a lottery.
Sure.
And I think I was number 30 out of 365. All my friends that were that low, under 100, got drafted immediately. My roommate in college, he got drafted. He was a first Louis. I said, I knew a little bit more about the war. I said, if you go to Nam as a first lieutenant, you're going to get fragged by our own men. So when he went there, he told his South Vietnamese sergeant, he says, you're the boss. I'm going to follow what you tell me to do, because I kind of like to live, So that was a war that shouldn't have been fought.
Horrible war.
Horrible war. Right. But I didn't know any difference. I didn't know.
Gulf of Tonkin, right? Didn't they debunk a lot of that stuff as the reason years later?
Yeah.
It's terrible. Yeah, my dad was in the Seabees.
Okay.
Division of the Navy.
Wow, yeah. Cool.
So he used to do, and he did maybe one tour in Vietnam, and they were building didn't see combat, but they were building landing strips on the beach so that the ships could come and drop off materials and planes could land. They did runways and stuff. Just being there messed him up. I mean, he came back different. Came back like a nervous and smoker. He came back a 2-pack-a-day chain smoker, and ultimately wound up dying from lung cancer at a young age.
And they drank a lot, used drugs.
Yeah.
It was rampant. Yep. Smoked pot. My best friend, who I went hunting with, shot rabbits and squirrels and deer. He came back. He was a sniper. He was really good. He was a better shot than I was. He did live, but he died soon after he came home. What did they call that stuff that they defoliated?
Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm. He died from Agent Orange cancer.
I just shouldn't say it's funny, but they approached my mom, because my dad died from lung cancer. He died at 42. Mm-hmm. And then somebody in the military, I guess the Navy or Army, but they said, hey, there's a class action lawsuit, and by this point he had passed years, and Mom just didn't want to dig it up and relive all of that. But, as they were building these landing strips and docks and ports, they had to defoliate all of that jungle.
Yeah, they did.
Yep. Nasty stuff.
And the soldiers could be right there underneath it getting an Agent Orange sprayed on them.
Yep.
So that was terrible. Well, then I went to college. When I first started, I didn't think I was college material. I didn't tell anybody that. I didn't think I was very smart. I had no clue. My brain didn't work right. It was ADHD. It was all over the place. Although being hyperactive made me very active, so I didn't have a bicycle, so I jog a lot. And I had a wonderful time at Concordia. My roommates were funny, and the camaraderie was just wonderful. So I was on the basketball team, and again, we won most of our games. We did very well.
Was it a Division III?
I think it was a Division II, or Division III. I don't know. It wasn't Division I.
Yeah.
Although NYU asked me if I'd be on their team. Had a good time in Concordia, and my professor said, look, you got to bring your grades up. You're not going to get into psychology degree. To get a PhD, you got to have straight A's. So I got my grades up. I got on the dean's list. I got into New York University, and then my professor, I said, I want to be in the psych program, and they said, a psych degree is useless unless you get your doctorate. That's what they said.
Yeah.
I don't know what the reality of it is. I think they watered down psych. So a master's degree psych, you can do therapy, but not then. It was very coveted. I ran track some. I was on the track team, but I focused on getting good grades, and I got them. I then I ran through the park. I ran all up and down the streets. If I was hyper, and getting anxiety attacks, I'd run off the adrenaline. That's how I dealt with my problems, and I got
ran from them.
Spent my life running from my problems. You should be a psychologist.
Forrest Gump, you really are Forrest Gump. Run, Tom, run.
Yeah. I got into the New School of Social Research. There was 200 of us in the room. The professor came out and he said, I'm a really good teacher. And he stood there first before he said that and just looked at us like examining us with a frown on his face. This is what they did in the old days. Teachers were like that. And then he said, I'm a really good teacher, and I'm going to show you how good I am. They said, look at the person on your left. I shook hands with her. I said, maybe we could study together, honey. And then he said, now look at the person on your right. Hi, how you doing, Joe? Pleased to meet you. Maybe we could study together. And then he crossed his arms and he looked at us and he said, by the end of this semester, I'm going to make sure, to show you how good I am, I'm going to make sure that 2 of you 3 are not here.
Very encouraging to a young mind.
And as far as I know, I heard of 3 of my classmates that committed suicide. That was
during the program?
Yeah.
While in school?
Yeah, from the pressure. Graduate schools, not just at that school, but other schools, was just outrageous in those days. I got mine, and you're going to have to work to get yours.
Yeah. Is this the 70s? 1970s?
Yeah, no, this was the late 60s. Okay. Late 60s, yeah.
So you joked about having this pretty young woman next to you. Did you have any relationship? What was the first girlfriend or first love of your life? Was that during your college years?
I was in high school.
Okay.
Paula, she was beautiful. Oh my God. I couldn't believe that somebody would take an interest in me, especially a cute little Lutheran girl like that. Beautiful. And I loved her dearly, but I knew I was too immature. I couldn't be married, stay married. I was too messed up. I had to get some psychology. I was totally whacked. And I didn't let on. I put my best front out, and she liked me. At the end of high school, I said, I can't get married. I mean, I'm too young, and I want to be a psychologist. I've got too many problems.
Mm. So you talked about this earlier, that because you had so many problems, that drew you towards that profession.
Yes.
Was it during school where you started doing the work on yourself, where you're
Yes.
starting to do the analysis,
Yes.
and saying, hey, I had some PTSD and trauma?
Yeah.
So
you're not going to believe this. When I was at NYU, I had a fantastic professor. He taught abnormal psych. Oh man, I signed up for it. There was like 300 people in the classroom, but I went and got James Coleman, same last name as me, book, and I said, oh man, now I'll know how to fix myself. And so I read about phobias, and they told all about different types of phobias and how trauma causes phobias and other things cause phobias. And then I looked at anxiety disorders and I read about that. And the more I read that abnormal psych book, the more terrified I became. I said, I messed up. Then I read about bipolar disorder, and I said, oh my God. Then I read about schizophrenia, and I said, oh, cripe. I mean, I don't have all the symptoms, but I got some of them. I said, I got to quit this class. I'm going to become a businessman. This is driving me crazy, because I'm crazy. I'm absolutely crazy. I went back to class, and the professor was walking up and down the stage, and he's looking at the audience. He said, you know something? I can see from your faces that most of you read this abnormal psych book. And I'm looking around. they didn't look any different to me.
Yeah.
This is the most important thing I'm going to say this semester. He said, when you read your abnormal psych book, I want to reassure you, if you don't see yourself on every page, you're going to see yourself on every other page. And I sat up in my seat and I said, what? And then he walked over to the board, they had chalk in those days, and wrote insight. If you think you're crazy, that means you have insight. You know, every one of you is taking this course because you have psychological problems. We're all looking at each other like, what? We're just kind of looking at each other and then looking at him. He said, let me tell you something. You're going to see yourself on a regular basis. That means you have insight. That means you got a leg up on all the people that are denying all of their psychological issues. That means you're more fixable than they are, because they're going to spend the rest of their life in denial of all of their psychological problems. They're going to have a rough time. You're here to fix yourself. I can see by the relief that's coming onto your faces. He wrote on the board, if you think you're crazy, you are not. If you think you are sane, watch out. You better make an appointment with me, because you're in deep, deep trouble.
Well, it's like a reality. It's the human condition, right? We're complicated. I know I'm complicated, and my mental wellness ebbs and flows, right? Depending on my spiritual.
What's happening?
Yeah, exactly.
What's happening around you? What the preacher said? You're going. Well, they said it when I was a kid. You're going straight to hell. Get your ass up here. Get on your knees and confess your sins. You're all sinners, especially you kids.
Right.
Anyways.
So you're in this fairly challenging post-grad program.
Right.
How long did that take you? When you did finally graduate, did you go straight into practice? How did you transition from education into professional life?
Well, one of the reasons why they flunked so many people out of the school is they didn't have very many advisors. They couldn't they couldn't supervise the dissertations at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they required German as a language. You had to know German and pass a German test. I didn't know German. I took German in Concordia, but I wasn't fluent in German, so I couldn't read Mother Courage or whatever German book there was. I had a 3.5, 3.6 average. I had a good enough average, but I failed the comps. We had a stack of books about 6 feet high, and I failed the comps. I took them again, and I failed them. So they said, sorry, you can't finish your doctorate here. We're not going to give you a dissertation. I was teaching in a college because I had a master's degree from them, and I was grateful for that. I'm not knocking the school. It's just a reality.
Sure.
I loved learning psychology, and I was teaching in Uppsala College, a Lutheran college that is now defunct. It was in East Orange, and having a good time. And then I got a job opening up Essex County College. So I got a job as a psychology professor there with a master's degree, and on my resume I put down that I had all the courses for a doctorate. And so I got a job there, and we set up Essex County College. It was right after the Newark riots, so I helped set up the college, and I was one of the first psychology professors there. Sometimes I was the only white person in the room, and it was difficult because I was teaching college level, and the students kind of mutinied, and they sent one of their most vocal females to the front of the class, and she confronted me in front of the class because they were not passing my tests. And she said, Mr. Coleman, let me tell you something. We didn't have any homework when we were in high school. You're requiring us to do homework. I said, I have a program where I'm supposed to train you to be a mental health worker. If you can't do squat, I can't pick up the phone and get you a job. I can't put my reputation on the line for you. I said, from now on, I am not going to teach this class. You are. I would give them 30 questions, and then I'd pick somebody at random and go up the aisle. I'd say, okay, Sarah, you do question number 1. If she couldn't do question number 1, I'd say to the person behind her, Jose, you do question number 1. He said, then he would look at Sarah and say, I was studying, I was cramming question number 2, and you didn't answer question number 1. And then if he couldn't answer it, then some of them started doing their homework. And they would put pressure on the ones that weren't doing their homework. I don't know if you're following what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
Because they didn't want to look like an idiot in class. Because if they were looking at a question,
they're counting ahead. Okay, number 8.
Because they didn't do the question ahead of time, so they were doing it in class, and so if it wasn't that question, they'd be humiliated. They humiliate each other, and then they'd walk out of class and they were arguing, and then they finally, a whole gobs of them were going to the library every day and teaching each other all the questions. And after a while, almost everybody in my classes was getting A's and B's because they were working as a team, and I encouraged it. And also, I was a psychologist and I had too many clients. I would put people together, and then I had a superior, my boss, the head of the psych department. He didn't like me. He went to the New School and got his PhD, and he gave me early morning classes and late at night classes. So here I was stuck in Newark all day long. I never complained because I loved it, but I had all this free time.
6 or 8 hours during the day.
So I got a letter from one of the drug programs that was starting up called Integrity House, and they asked if I would come and help them run groups. So I went there and I started doing therapy with them. It was mainly minorities, and it was mainly minority staff, and it was wonderful. I had to throw out my psychology book and develop all kinds of new techniques. We'd bring homeless there, and we'd bring different programs to bring their people. It was just a riot. I developed a concept called the recovery walk, where you'd have all these cards on the floor, and you'd walk over to one that said Father, and then they would pick somebody from the group to play their father and stand in front of them and say, Dad, you know how I feel about you? You're a blah, 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 blah. You know, they really get into it. And then they go to their mother and say, Mom, I really love you. You didn't have a man in the house, and blah, blah, blah. And I really am grateful. I'll always love you, Mom. You know, a woman who played that role. They talk to God. God, I don't believe in you. I grew up in the hood, and I grew up with drugs, and I got drawn into the drug problem. What's the matter with you? Why'd you do this to me? Why couldn't you make me a different race or something? Etc., etc. So I ran those types of groups. And eventually I realized psychologists didn't use primal groups, but I found out that they were primaling in my group all the time. You know, they were getting in touch with feelings. So I have them on the floor doing, I'd have first 15, then 30, then 50, then 100 people laying on the floor, then 200 people from churches, teenagers from high school, drug programs, homeless shelters, homeless people. And I'd say, a friend of mine, he would play father, and he'd say, I was a good father, wasn't I, kid? Oh boy, the whole room would lit up. You blah, 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 blah.
Daddy issues, yep.
Yeah, by the end of the group, man, everybody's getting up saying, oh my God, I feel so much better. And I did. I confronted my father in therapy, and I realized it's tremendous relief. And I trained my interns to break up these large groups into groups of 12, so they could watch over them and they could hug people that got really, really upset. And I found out that the 50-minute hour doesn't really work very well. Psychology. I mean, I went to psychologists, and I'd start crying and talking about the pain of my childhood, and the therapist would look at their watch and say, your time is up, come back next week.
Billable hours, right? They're not.
Yeah. And it cost me a lot, and I'm saying, oh my God, what am I going to do with all these feelings? You know? Because I always ended the groups on a positive note with positive music and hugging and saying I love you, and feedback where they say, you could tell that my interns would listen to them tell what they experienced and what they went through and the traumas. They were coming up with all kinds of stuff. Women were, I mean, it was terrible how many women were sexually abused, how many men were sexually abused. Oh my God. And my students would come like, whoa. But they were healing because it worked. And then I would go to a prison. I tried to talk to the guys there, and they cuss me out. And they say, what the hell do you know about what we are going through? Now, this was white, Spanish, and black. They say, you're an asshole. Get out of here. I went back to my class. I said, I'm going to give you a problem. I want you to work on this problem. I want you to see if you can find a solution. I went to prison. I've been going to prisons, and I'm trying to get groups of people to open up, and they're ganging up on me. How can we reach them? And one of my ex-cons, who was called Batman in prison, he said to me, what you need to do is somehow have them tell their secrets anonymously. And then I had another student later on say he was a witch doctor. He was cheating in my class. I don't know if you want to hear this story.
Sure.
He was a witch doctor.
Yeah, witch doctor. How can I not want to hear this story? Yeah.
He was young. He came to the United States to get an education. He was going to go back and be the head of his witch doctor clan. We were going to have a sensitivity group at the Salvation Army with a couple hundred people. He was cheating in my class, and I got the evidence together, and I told him, I said, why shouldn't I kick you out of school? He said, please, Doc, I love your class. I love you. Please, don't kick me out of school. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm very tortured. I said, well, you've got to stop cheating. You know, you can't cheat your way through school. And he said, I'm sorry. I said, I'll tell you what. If you come to my sensitivity group at the Salvation Army this Saturday, and you use it, and then you come to school and you stop cheating, I'll let you. I won't kick you out. I won't write you up. And he said, I'll do that. So I went to my Bible class, and I was trained. I had too many people coming to my groups, so I trained my Bible class how to run groups, and they'd follow me from Randolph into the hood. This was on Springfield Avenue, and run groups for me, you know. And I said, buddy, you're an ex-alcoholic. You were fed at that Salvation Army. You grew up on Springfield Avenue. I want you to run his group. But we got to start praying now. Because when he was in his office, this guy who was the witch doctor, you know, after he started to open up, and then all of a sudden his eyes glazed over when he was talking to me. And he leaned over, looked me directly in the eye, and he says, do you know who I am? I said, no. I said, no, who are you? I am God Almighty, ruler of the universe. And he looked me directly in the eye, and I said to myself, this isn't the same guy. This isn't him. Holy cow, I'm talking to a demon. I've seen it before, but now this is clear. So I said, okay, no problem. And I just sat back and I waited. And finally he was shaking his head, you know, and he was shaking. And then he came back to his ego, his number one set, you know, talking to me. And I said, well, that was quite an experience. So are you coming to the group? So he showed up. He showed up on that Saturday to the group. We did a secrets group where they told their secrets.
And how does that work?
Oh, well, yeah, that has to do with getting ex-cons to open up, that I opened up a can of worms about that. Let me regress a little bit, then I'll get to the guy who was, let's call him Gladdy. Let's call him Gladdy, okay. He's the one, Gladdy, when he was in his right mind, told me, he says, have him do it anonymously. He was the one that came up with secrets groups. He said, all you have to do is have them write their deepest, darkest secret on a 3x5 card, take them, shuffle them, pass them back around in the group, and then that person will pretend they are that person with that secret, and they'll make up a story that they think is plausible. Oh my God, those groups made ex-cons totally open up because they were totally anonymous. Nobody knew what getting raped in jail was very common, and murder and all kinds of stuff. People would admit to it. I had them print. I didn't have them write. and I would make sure I destroyed those.
Right, shred them, burn them.
Right. So they got totally. I said, if you're going to get well, don't waste my time. Be totally, completely, and brutally honest, or don't come. And they were. So that really opened up. My students were using secrets groups and homeless programs. Oh my God, they were coming back and saying, people are just, and they come over to me privately and say, that was me. My first day of jail when I got raped by 20 guys. That was my card. Please don't tell anybody, because I don't want anybody to know. They would actually go to the group leader, who was often of their ethnic background, if it was Spanish. I even ran Spanish groups. I had Spanish groups at that Salvation Army too.
¿Hablas español?
Yeah. You speak it?
No.
So where was I? Gladdy is laying on the floor, and all of a sudden he starts frothing from the mouth, and just screaming the most unearthly screams that are imaginable, and people are getting up and running out the exits. And it looked at me. He was like levitating, and the marshal at the Salvation Army ran over to me. He says, "He's having a seizure." I said, "You haven't seen that before?" He said, "What are you talking about, seeing that before? I'm calling an ambulance." I said, No, just go out there and get these people to come back in. Wait till you hear his testimony at the end. Please, don't spoil this group for everybody. Don't call an ambulance. He's fine. Anyways, I didn't explain what it was, but...
Sounds like an exorcism or a possession.
Buddy is, and all the guys from my Bible class are leaning over Gladdy, holding him down because he's gyrating. He's gyrating on the floor, praying over him, and asking God to intervene. And at the end of the group, he came up to the front of the group, was weeping. That was several hours later. I run groups for 5 hours because people, when they open up, you can't just close them up and
sure, can't be.
You've got to stay with them. My students stayed with them. And if they were of the same ethnic background or neighborhood or whatever, they felt safer. That's why I always stayed in the background and just taught them what to do. And they did a lot of the heavy lifting. And it transformed them too. And I made sure that they got a lot of their issues out before they played with anybody else's mind. Gladdy came up in the front, he's weeping. He said, "I don't know how many demons came out of me. Maybe 100. I don't know. I have never felt so safe and whole and loving in my whole life. I am free. But I must confess to you, if I go back home, my family will murder me. They will kill me. Because I can't be a witch doctor. I don't want to be a witch doctor. I don't want to go to hell. And there is a hell because I've seen it. I've been there. I know it. I've interacted with it." Everybody's like, whoa. Well, anyways, he became a minister.
It's incredible.
And he became straight A's in school. His grades, he didn't need to cheat anymore. He was getting straight A's. As a matter of fact, he was so good that I said, it made me cry when it was snowing in Newark because the homeless shelters were turning people away. And I see the people in a blanket in the doorway, and I'd walk over to them and I'd say, why aren't you in the homeless shelter? It's full, and they won't let me in. Fire laws or something. So I have to sleep here. And a lot of them died, froze to death. And it made me cry because I'm working early morning, late at night, going home late at night, so I'm seeing all these homeless people sleeping out in the snow. Anyways.
So at the time, you were teaching class early, teaching class late,
Right.
doing the Integrity House stuff during the day, and then still seeing clients or patients?
Yeah.
When the hell did you
working-
find time to do that?
I was working 15 hours a day.
You're burning the midnight oil.
Yeah. Well, what happened is when the administration found out that he was doing this to me, trying to get me to quit, and then I guess I developed a pretty good reputation from the students. They love me. They really love me. Because, I'm just a person, just like them. I don't put on airs and act like a superior.
And you weren't telling them things. I think that's a very different way of educating people. You're guiding, but they're doing it, right? They're figuring it out. It's like peers helping peers,
Right.
peers challenging peers.
Right.
It's beautiful. And it probably takes somebody without an incredibly strong ego to be willing to do that, right? I've got my advanced degree, and I've got this, and I'm the professor. So I could imagine being in that position, having a desire to tell people and instruct people. And instead, you kind of let them find their path.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
People helping people that they can relate to one another, right? Former con, alcoholic, drug addict.
Right.
People that have like experiences.
Yeah.
Have credibility, right?
Yeah.
Real credibility.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting. Over your career, did you find both group sessions like that and one-on-one sessions to be equally beneficial? Were some better for the certain patients than others? Like, I can't imagine myself being in a big group situation like that and finding solace in that type of therapy. But
Right.
what's your experience been?
Well, if you came to my groups, I saw clients here. They were sitting on that couch or in that chair there, for an hour. But private clients. But then I'd make sure they go to my groups.
Sure.
Because especially if they had deep, dark issues that you can't deal with for an hour at a time. They got to get deep. They got to go deep. But going back to the guy the doctor that was my boss, when the administration found out that he was doing this to me, they couldn't fire him because he had tenure. Because it happened for a long time, and I'm glad it happened. You'd make lemonade out of lemons.
Mm-hmm.
They sent him to East Caldwell, and they said, "Don't come back." So he taught it. He came all the way from New York City, and they forced him to go all the way to Caldwell.
Shipped them out.
Because they said, that is unconscionable what you have done to that professor. And he hasn't complained one time about you. He's been nothing but respectful. I've always had a tremendous inferiority complex. But I realize that's just a feeling. It's not a reality now. I didn't know. If you feel inferior, it doesn't mean you are inferior. If you feel like you're crazy, it probably means you're not crazy. Follow me?
Yeah. How do you, because that's such an interesting thing, how do you do all that you've done, i.e. run hundreds of marathons and write novels and write this with a trauma and inferiority complex? Like, what does your process look like? How do you get out of your head? How do you get out of your own way to do it anyway?
Well, could I say that probably an inferiority complex is what has driven most people to become highly successful, quiet as it's kept. They're not going to tell you how bad they feel about themselves, but they're going to try to over perform because we're trying to prove our value in life. So if I grew up really, really poor, I become a high need achiever and become really, really rich. Inferiority feelings are the gas that drive most successful people.
Super interesting. And then, what is it? Hard times make hard men. It sounds like you've been able to take a lot of the hardship and struggle and use it, just like you said, as the fuel to moving forward.
Yeah.
When again, jumping around a little bit, but when did you run your first marathon? So I know you ran in college. It sounded like you did it in high school. You're definitely into that, and running was a safe place for you to kind of work through things. When did you start running competitively and running in the marathons?
Well, I didn't even know what a marathon was, but I was a runner. So I just signed up for this 10K and that 10K. I was running 10Ks all over New Jersey. And it was quick, and I had a family, and I had responsibilities, and I had a job. I could run a fast 10K, but I said, well, those marathoners get a medal just for finishing. That's not fair, because I didn't get squat. Sometimes I got third place or something in a 10K. But all I have to do is finish a marathon. I'm going to give that a try. So I went to Cape Cod, and I ran, I think it was the Hyannis Marathon, with a buddy of mine. I did it in 3 hours and 30 minutes. Felt great. They gave me this beautiful, they weren't very big in those days. They were just kind of copper things. But I said, well, that's a good memory. So I kind of got hooked on it and started running more marathons. And I was saying, holy cow, this is a miracle. I used to be a cripple. I'm running 26.2 miles. Yeah, my knee hurts, but it'll bounce back in a week and I'll run another marathon and another marathon. I just got hooked on them. You know, when I was suffering, everybody suffers unbelievably at the end of a marathon. I said, the pain I've gone through is nothing. This pain is nothing compared to what Jesus went through on the cross. So what's the big deal? You know, just suck it up. You know, my father was a suck it up type of person. He told me, my father wanted me. He didn't care if I went to school. I had to milk all the cows. I had to feed the chickens before he'd let me go to school. So I jump on the horse and tear my way to school because I wanted to go to school, because I wanted to get off that damn farm. But he said I flunked the high school exam, and they weren't going to let me in high school. And so I really worked really hard, and finally got into high school. And then he said I didn't think I could go to college, but he went to Drexel University. And he was very handy mechanically. He made steam turbines. He used to fix cars. You know, he could fix your car. You bring it over and fix your car. He could wire your house. He was a brilliant man.
A man's man. Yep.
He was a man's man. Yeah, the men loved him. And he was a good man. I mean, if your house burned down, he put the plumbing in it for you when you built a new one, and he put your new electrical system in on weekends. Mm-hmm. You know, so he was a good man. He did the best he could.
I know it feels like I've lost the chronology of it, but tell me about your children. And like, how old were you when you had your children? Super curious to hear about your parenting style over the years too, and how your upbringing might have.
Well, I realized that families first, especially when I had kids, and I saw so many of my friends, even Christian friends, their kids went awry. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And then I went around the town, and I go to the nearest high school, and I'd say, you know, they got drugs in this town. I could tell just by how the kids were interacting here, there, and everywhere. Family comes first. Family comes before. Family and God comes before school, everything. So I had a house in Vermont, and because I worked such long hours, I said, weekends are sacred. I'll run a sensitivity group periodically on weekends, but only periodically. And they were huge, up to 500 people.
Wow, where did they do them?
40 workers. Well, you know, Essex County College found I was doing them all over. I was doing them all over the place. So they said, why aren't you doing them here? I said, well, you never asked. You never asked. I said, I'd love to. So they gave me the cafeteria. And then they gave me the gymnasium. And whoa! And my students, I just give my students the brochures and they pass them all around the urban areas. And people are just pile it. I miss it. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, sure.
I actually had my son, when he got older, play the music. We'd play music and have everybody dance in the beginning, and we'd play, music, We Are the World, or a Christian song. We'd say, we love everybody. If you're a Muslim, you can take your prayer rug over there on the eastern side of the building and you can pray. Well, but if anybody wants to accept Christ as your Savior, you just come to the center and do it. And, oh God, hundreds of people came to Christ. It was just beautiful. And they were good Christians. I could trust them, even though they were ex-convicts and ex-addicts and everything. Yeah.
Did you ever have any instances where you felt endangered by anyone in the practice? Where you're like, my physical safety is concerned. Yeah.
I was living next to the hood when I was single. Yeah. And going to town. Sometimes I'd run to school through the hood. And after one group, I said to one of my students, I'm tired of looking down the barrel of a gun. I'm tired of being held up. And my student started laughing. I said, what are you laughing about? We'll call him Adam. He said, Doc, if I was a drug addict, look at the way you dress. You got short hair. It's not that long. You wear a white shirt. You wear a tie. You wear a jacket. You carry a briefcase. If I was a drug addict, I'd think money, and I'll get your money any way I can. I said, well, what am I going to do about that? He said, look at the hippies. Look at the anti-war people. Long hair, smell like hell, t-shirts, jeans with holes in them. He said, no, they walk through the hood, nobody,
right, yeah.
Nobody bothers with them. So I set my shaver aside.
Yeah, you gotta dress like a bum. Stop shaving.
Well, I didn't dress like a bum. But I wore shirts, regular shirts, button shirts and jeans, and I had long hair, and I had a long beard. I didn't look down the barrel of the gun anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. Just him. He was. Do you mind if I tell you this? I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything. I said, no. I
asked you. Yeah,
I asked you. Yeah. So he told me because he knew. He knew. A couple months later, he says, yeah. You look fine.
Yeah, don't look like
you don't look like you got any money now.
Yeah, don't look like a victim, right? So tell me more about the family. When did you meet your wife? How old were you? How long were you guys married? Can you tell me about
that? I met her in Vermont skiing.
Okay.
Yeah. She's got a story she tells that's really a laugh. I was into teaching at Essex County College, and I had a beard and kind of long hair. Anyways, so it was raining the next day, so I met her at Bromley, and I bought lunch, and I said, you want to go real estate hunting because my sister and I are going to buy a house in Vermont? She said, sure. So the realtor kept talking to her, showing her, and I'm standing there, and he's showing her all the houses he's got, and we're going through them, and then he turns to her and he says, well, what do you think? Are you interested in buying any of them? And she looks over her shoulder and points to me. He says, he's the one with the money. You should be talking to him. He said, really? Him?
You had the hippie look going, right? That got no money. She makes all the decisions. You just write the check.
She's like, I met him yesterday. So it was love at first sight. I was smitten, and we've been married for 52 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I learned that the most important thing to say that keeps you married is called "yes, dear." She's been a wonderful wife, fantastic. And I said, if you want to work, work. If you don't want to work, that's fine, just raise the kids. So she stayed home with our son, Brad, and that's wonderful. When Tam was born, she stayed home, and when she was done breastfeeding, she says, I want to go to work. I said, fine. So she went to work as a learning consultant. She went to college and got her learning consulting license. And the rest is history. We were very busy, and so we made weekends sacred, and we went to Vermont or someplace every week because it was all about family. Family, family, family. We go visit her brothers or sisters or her parents or whatever. It was all about family because I saw the thing that was getting the kids on drugs was weekends, was free time. It was after the football game, etc., etc. Brad joined the football team, and I said, you can play football. But what about skiing in Vermont, And he said, I think I'd rather ski. I'd rather have family time. So we've been a family.
That's great.
And a very tight family. My kids are more successful than I can even dream of. Yeah.
How close are they in age?
About 2 years apart. Yeah.
And your son's the older of the two?
He's the older of the two. He's conservative. My daughter, she's a liberal. But anyways.
Makes for interesting Thanksgivings.
Yeah, but they argue, and I say, no politics. Just shut up. Just talk about your kids. Talk about whatever. Let's not get in any arguments or anything.
It's been an interesting week with a lot of friends, and I consider myself to be very independent-minded, so I don't choose a party. But I've had conversations with people on both sides, and I wish more of our country could do that, right? Like, we could agree to disagree on principles.
Why can't we do that?
Yeah. It's like policies. I think anytime you make a figurehead, the person, it's Kamala, it's Trump, it's visceral, right? As opposed to this policy affects me and my family, this is important to me, this is why I would choose this over this, and you have a rational, logical conversation, and then, okay, I appreciate your perspective. I didn't think of it like that. Maybe I'll have to research that.
Yeah, let's have a discussion about it. All of us are somewhere in between.
That's right.
Really. And, okay, maybe the candidates suck, but maybe take the one that's less sucky, or at least what you think.
Yeah.
But it depends on whose lies you're listening to, so.
That's right. And it's a matter of doing your research, but who the hell has the time to do it? You've got kids.
You're busy.
Yeah. So to be able to read different articles in different journals and listen to different news, and it's hard, right? It's hard for people to stay up on that.
I write books and I get offers. Oh, this New York Times wants to interview you. Give me this call, or the Los Angeles Times wants to interview you, and blah, blah, blah. And what they do, they just suck you in. They say, before the interview, we got to rebrand your book, etc., etc. They're slick. There's so many lies out there. I don't even answer my phone because it rings 24/7. I say to people, if you want to talk to me, call my wife.
Yeah. That's how I got in touch with you. I don't even have your number. I actually was texting your wife this week. Hey, is Thursday still good? I'll stop by.
Yeah. She sacrificed so much when I was running these big groups, and I was a big shot, that I let her make the schedule now. She deserves it. And she's good at it, probably. Yeah. Last weekend during the marathon, she she dragged me over to the Museum of Modern Art. Now, I probably would have gone to another museum, but she likes art, so we went to the art museum. I'm fine with that, Yeah, but my kids are really, really successful.
That's great. Are they local? Or no, they're out west.
My daughter married a German, and he took her to Germany. But they both were skiers, and the skiing in Europe hasn't been so good in the past few years because of maybe global warming. I don't know. So they decided to come to the United States for a year, and we were fully planning to have a year with them. It was wonderful. I was with my grandchildren. My grandson, he in Germany playing soccer. Here, I took him one day and I signed him up for a soccer game, intramural soccer game. He's 10 and scored 3 goals. And I said to the coach, I said, let's sign him up. How do I get a T-shirt for this team? He said, hell no. He's going to go on the traveling team.
Yeah.
I mean, the kid is a star here. I mean, but
well, it's funny. United States and soccer have always had a weird relationship.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better and bigger the last decade. But even when I was a kid, they had what was it, the Cosmos? Remember the professional?
Yeah.
So my dad used to take us as kids. We'd do the Cosmos.
Oh, cool.
But then it kind of died out, and I don't know whether it's our area. There's so much happening in the New York area.
Well, football.
Yeah, real football. Yeah. American football de Americano.
Yeah.
So he's a soccer star here in the States.
Oh man, so he loves it. He didn't want to go back, and his sister, who was a twin, she got into cheerleading and everything, and my daughter, who was an American, wanted to stay. And I stayed out of it. I don't give them any advice at all. I don't give my kids advice. I figure being a role model is more important than advice. So she persuaded her husband to stay. She persuaded him to come here for a year, and he liked it so much because they met in Steamboat. He was running a ski shop and teaching in the college, and that's where he met my daughter. She was teaching in the college, Colorado Mountain College. Anyways, so that's the story.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You alluded to it, but let's talk more about your writing career. So I know you've written all over the spectrum, right? You've done some professional journals and psychology things as well as fiction. Talk to me a little bit about that. Why'd you start? When'd you start? How did that process work?
Have you ever heard of the term catharsis?
Sure.
I really didn't have it. I was a loner in grade school and high school. It was hard for me to make friends. I wouldn't call me a nerd because I wasn't that bright, or I didn't think I was. But I needed an outlet. I found that writing my feelings down in a notebook made me feel better. And then I started telling stories, and I won some contests when I was a kid. I had a friend of mine, he was from Nigeria growing up, and he drowned when we were out swimming in a lake. And I was very disturbed by that. He died.
It's terrible.
And I wrote an article about it, and I guess it was really heartfelt. I sent it to a Christian magazine, and they said, well, we don't deal with that stuff, but we're going to pass it on. So they sent it to another magazine, and it was a big hit. When I was a kid, I wrote essays in 2nd grade and 3rd grade. And many of them, my teacher said, wow, let's put them in the paper. So she sent them to the paper and get them published. She corrected my spelling. My spelling was terrible.
Of course, your grammar.
My grammar, my sentence structure. So people thought I was a good writer until I developed a wife as an English teacher. But I said, I am a good writer, you know.
She was like, well, you got a good imagination. Let's leave it at that.
No, she corrects all my spelling and my grammar and everything and tells me, you rewrite this. You know, she's really good about that.
So she's been a part of your writing process?
Yes,
for years,
very much so, yeah. I worked in a mental institution, a psychiatric institution, when I got out of undergraduate school. While I was going to graduate school, I was working at Essex County College, or Essex County Hospital Center, a mental hospital. It was a hellhole. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. It was bothering my conscience. There was murders. There was a goon squad. There was, they would keep the patients in line if they'd act up. Anyways.
Abusive and things that they got away with. And
there was, attendants would occasionally get murdered, be found dead. As a matter of fact, when I was on the night shift, all the attendants would just lock themselves in the office and not go out and pick up the dead bodies the next day. It was terrible. I almost died. I was sticking my nose into what some of the attendants were doing and doing to the patients and stuff. And I didn't realize it, but I was pissing my boss off. He sicked one of the patients on me and he came up behind me. He choked me unconscious.
God.
And I would have died. But there was a young boy, he was 16, on our ward. And I went over to him, he was a black kid, and I said, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be in here with all these adults. They all have schizophrenia, and they gave me the worst ward. This is where they weren't toilet trained and everything. I was just an attendant making $200 a month. And he said, I threatened the staff. He was a pretty rugged guy. I threatened the staff, so they send him as punishment to the adult wards, and they'd be abused. And that would humble them down. But he was a rough kid. He was street smart. They didn't mess with him. But he knew. He was street smart. He saw my boss call this patient into his office and talk to him. My boss said, I want you to stay behind and get Demi, the client, to the cafeteria. I said, why? You don't want him to come along? No, he's acting up. See? He's running around the ward acting up. Get him down to dinner in the basement. I'll leave the door open to the basement. And I tried to corral him and get him to go. He wouldn't go. I turned my back and he lunged for my throat and put me unconscious. Well, this client, let's call him Jim, he knew that was going to happen.
They set you up.
Mm-hmm. And so he was hiding and just watching around the corner. And then when I was unconscious and the guy was finishing me off, he came in, beat the crap out of him. I mean, he was a tough kid. I woke up finally, and he said, yeah, that was a setup. So we herded the patient down into dinner. I didn't say anything to my boss. I didn't even tell him what happened. I just watched my back after that.
Was it days before there was cameras everywhere? And
yeah. It would be my word against Goon Squad. And it wouldn't work, you know.
Sounds like a terrible environment. The toxic,
violent,
you know.
Of course. So I wrote a book about it.
Okay.
I'll give it to you. You can go home and read it. I don't recommend you read it.
Sounds like a page turner. Yeah.
I don't recommend you read it because it's horrific.
Dark.
Absolutely horrific. I sent letters to agents. And I got an agent immediately. I'm saying, wow, I didn't realize agents were this easy to get. And this guy calls me up and he says, "Holy cow, did you really write that book?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That is the most gruesome, unbelievable book. Is any of that true?" And I didn't put that incident in it. I left some of the really, really gory stuff out of it. But I did write about a mental institution. And I said, it's pretty gory because this is what's happening. And I was I was interviewed by people that were for deinstitutionalization. In a way, I wish I had come at it with a different approach, because now you see all the mentally ill on our streets, and that's not good either. We haven't come up with a good solution. They closed these mental institutions. But this is such a horrific book. I mean, it makes One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest like a Sunday picnic.
Yeah.
When it came to publication, it sold out immediately. I mean, people were in line, especially the attendants and the administrators. All the people that had any affiliation with the college and doctors were buying my book. And I thought, oh, geez, I'm going to go to jail.
Where the goon squad's going to meet you at the car in a dark evening. Do you?
I did not talk about the goon squad. I mean, if I rewrote that book, or if I wrote another one, but anyways, that's another story. But if I really wrote what exactly happened, it'd be even more gruesome.
What was I don't know much about it. What was the move behind the deinstitutionalization? Was that like big pharma, and they were coming out with the antipsychotics and trying to medicate everybody? Like, what was the big push?
No, pharma was fully invested in the mental hospital condition. We had a medicine thing in force just about every person, especially the most aggressive ones.
Just lithium.
And they died young. Chlorpromazines kill dopamine in the brain, so it causes early Parkinson's disease. Well, my mother died of at age 50, Parkinson's disease. I don't know if she had those drugs then, but something killed her young.
That's one that scares me. My grandfather on my mother's side had Parkinson's, and he was ill for probably 30 years. And most of what I remember from him, he had all his wits about him, but his motor skills were going. And the last 10 years, he couldn't speak, and he couldn't even hold his saliva in his mouth. It was like just terrifying. I want something faster. Just quick.
So that's the story. Anyways, the book sold out, and I was writing other books. I was really encouraged until my hometown newspaper called me, and they said, "We want you to interview you because you're a Wellsville resident, and so I want to interview you." He was the head of the newspaper, and I said, "No problem. I'll be in Wellsville visiting my father. I'll come over." So I showed up at the paper's office, and I had interviews from other papers, but this is a particular one that I went to, and I said, "Is so-and-so there?" And they said, "Are you Tom Coleman?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're Tom Coleman?" "Yeah, I've come here for an interview." He said, "My boss was reading your book last night. He got so disturbed that he yanked a leg off the dining room table and beat his wife almost half to death. She's in the hospital and he's in jail."
Jesus Christ.
I said, "Oh, God." He said, "What possessed you to write this book?" I said, "I just write about reality. What can I tell you? But this book is different. I thought I was full of myself, and I thought I was a really good writer, and I was writing like James Joyce. I was using stream of consciousness, and I was looking. I was all day long. I was studying the schizophrenic mind to see if I could find a cure, and the manic depressives and everything. So I wrote a book so I could not only show behavior, but get into the person's mind. So that's why it's so disturbing. You'll see.
Yeah,
I don't even recommend you read it.
I'm highly interested in that. I have I've got a dark lens on a lot of things, and it's very interesting.
That's why I got an agent right away. And he said, you are going to go places. You are one of the best writers that I've ever had as a client. I said, well, don't flatter me too much. He said, I want you to write. You're going to be very successful. I said, well, that was a pretty good book. He says, well, some people like that. Soon after my book was published, his secretary called me up and said to me, we're sending all your books back. That was after a while, that I was with him. I said, what do you mean you're sending my books back? He liked my books. Well, he passed away. He had a heart attack. So I said, oh. So I tried to find another agent with other books, and then I found it's tough. It's really rough. That's the story about that.
It almost sounds like there's a Netflix series in there, right? Life inside an institution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some of the realities.
It's even more gory than Life of Crime by HBO that I'm in the end of as the psychologist. It makes that look like a picnic.
What do you do for your mental health? It's such an interesting story too, Tom, because you have this colored childhood, which leads you to psychology to basically better understand yourself and fix yourself. Then you jump into a career of psychology where you're with criminals and drug addicts and mentally ill patients. Like, what have you done throughout your life to keep your mental wellness whole? Like, how do you stay sane through all of this insanity?
I love it. I absolutely love it because I was so messed up, and I was in therapy myself, and I had a therapist who was off the charts. And one day I went to therapy group, and the whole group just got quiet. I was late, and the whole group got quiet. And they were looking at each other. And I said, okay, you were talking about me. What's going on? Spill the beans. I was single at the time. You're talking about your life. And quite frankly, you're talking about your father. And quite frankly, we think that you're exaggerating, that you don't tell the truth. And, it's very important to be truthful. I said, I don't know why, but I've lived an extremely colorful life. And I think I am very truthful. So the therapist said, well, then prove it. I said, oh, crap. He said, you talk about your father. And that he was a tough guy. I said, yeah, he was. I love him. Well, your homework is to go to your father's house, throw your arms around him and tell him you love him. Give him a kiss. And I said to him, you want me to do that with my father? Are you serious? We don't believe you. We do not believe you. Your father can't be that chauvinistic, that narrow-minded. I said, he's a good man, but all right, I'll do it. So I drove 10 hours to my father's house in Wellsville, New York, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I went in the back door, and I thought, well, I'm going to leave him alone. We showed up. He heard somebody come in the house. And so I said, I might as well get this over with. And so I went over to him and said, Dad, I just want you to know I love you. And I reached over and gave him a big hug and tried to give him a peck on the cheek. He put his arms like this in between us and went, boom, boom, and I went headlong into the wall. If there wasn't a wall there, I would have sprawled totally on the floor and gone 10 feet. And he walked out of the room into the dining room or somewhere into the darkness. The light wasn't on in there. I said, oh, God, I hope he doesn't come back with a gun or a baseball bat or something. He came back, and his face was red, and his fists were clenched. And then he pointed his finger at me. He said, your mother ruined you. I said, thanks a lot, Dad. I appreciate that. So I drove 10 hours, and I went back to the group. And I told them what happened. I was crying, and they all apologized. Please forgive us. We believe you are telling the truth. You're just telling the cold, honest truth. You're more honest than we are. I said, well, what is there but the truth? You know the truth. Your truth sets you free. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love what I'm doing. I don't get involved with mental illness. I do mentally healthy things. I help people. I love people. There is no mental illness in love. Mm-hmm. There is no mental illness from God. He doesn't make you crazy. It's the other guy that pulls the strings.
The world. Yeah, I definitely I can relate to the concept of being as sick as our secrets. And that's what I'm thinking. Yes. I think of your dad. Like, what the fuck happened to that man? What happened to that man? What are his secrets that have led him to
That's what I understood. He had a rough life. He was good with his fists. He told me one day that he got in a fight in the playground when he was a kid and knocked a kid unconscious. He thought he killed him. And then he said, I better not show my pugilistic skills so outstandingly anymore. He was a good fighter. He would have made a good boxer. It was hard to forgive him. But then the therapist had role-played my father, and I got it all out because he realized I need to work with that issue, and so we worked it out, and the whole group supported me. And I forgave him, and we became the best of friends. He did a lot of carpentry work for me. He put in 2 fireplaces in Vermont for me, wiring of houses I had, just like your father-in-law does. He couldn't do enough for me. We became the best of friends. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. You're not perfect.
No.
So there you have it.
Do the best you can. And that's what you like to think that most people are just doing the best they can. But I also think that most people could use therapy in some type of tools, like recovery tools, where you do some self-analysis and look at the underlying cause of why do I keep doing the same behavior that continues to lead me down a bad path, right. Yet tomorrow, and I swear I'm never going to do it again, and tomorrow I'm doing the same thing.
That's why inauthentic psychologists and counselors don't really get people to open up, because people can sense whether you're honest or not. Why not tell the truth?
My younger daughter, she's 12, and she was, I think we're all born unique, right? Everybody's unique.
You better believe it. My daughter and my son are so...
polar opposites.
Yeah, exactly.
Same recipe, same household, very different. But she was born an empath. She is very in touch with how other people feel, and it affects her. Like, it physically affects her. If somebody's sad or somebody's being...
A lot of women are like that, yeah.
My other one, not so much. She's lovely.
That's my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my son.
I would say cold, but like more self-centered and more focused on how she feels as opposed to... And it's very interesting, because if I'm being honest and genuine, like, some of the prayers that I do, I'll ask God, teach me to love without conditions, because it's not something that comes intuitive. Like, I'm flawed. I'm flawed human being. Yeah, but it's just beautiful watching this little one. So again, she wasn't taught that. Like, she was born that way.
Right.
God made her that way.
Right.
And even now, so she's in middle school, which is a savage just years for little girls.
Right.
And she's like the ambassador. So anytime they have a new kid that comes to the school, they say, okay, we're going to get Tanner. We're going to have them hang out with Jamie all day or Cindy all day.
Oh, that's nice.
You know, she'll sit with them in the cafeteria.
That's my daughter. My daughter does that.
It's,
Miss Hospitality.
Yeah, it's just kind of neat the way some people are wired. So, how are you doing? We're 2 hours in. Have some more topics you want to go? You want to?
Are we okay? I mean, I'll go all night long.
Going? Yeah, no,
I used to work 15-hour days.
So 2 hour chat's nothing. Yeah, I mean, let's.
If you want to hear the whole shebang.
But I know you're leaving soon.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
Yeah. How long have you been in this house?
40 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 years, 35 years, something like that.
And you're going to Colorado.
Yeah. And I'll sell my house for peanuts compared to the houses in Steamboat.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we're going to swing that, but we'll be near my daughter, and I love that. She likes having me around. Some of my friends, their kids don't want them around, and I never wanted that. So both of my kids love us, so much they want us around, which is surprising.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, you know a little bit about my current situation. So my wife and 2 kids were living with my in-laws the past 4 months. We're building a home where we can move my mother in with us. So I'm in your camp. Oh, yeah. Mom will move in.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she has a townhouse today. So we're going to, hopefully this spring we're done. We'll sell her place, move her in. She'll have, her mother-daughter first floor thing. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. And I love, my kids are sort of homebodies, not always, but they like being home, which I'm thrilled with. And even when they're loud and they're annoying and they eat us out of, it goes really fast.
Yeah.
Like life is just flying by.
You have a lot of natural affection, which is important. That's what we need to nurture in people. Natural affection, yeah.
Yeah, I love people. I'm a recruiter by trade. So,
really?
Yeah.
Well, you're a very good interviewer. Oh my God, you're a good listener.
I'm naturally interested in people. And you and I were even talking before we started hit recording, like everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got a story.
Oh my God, yeah. And I encourage them. And they do it. They write a story, and some of them get them published. Several of them, many of my students wrote books. I said, you run the hood. You got a book there.
Oh, yeah.
You got a book, man.
Absolutely.
And they're writing books and stuff. Some are better than others, and some of them are doing well. I can go on for another 2 hours, but I don't want to. You got a life.
I'm off tomorrow.
All right, you got to let me get some more water.
Yeah. All right, we are back. Tom and we just had so many interesting conversations offline. I feel like I should have hit record a couple minutes ago, but
you're an excellent interviewer. You really have a talent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I enjoy it. So some of the things I'd love to just, I would even say circle back to, because I'm amazed. Talk to me more about your running. So you were kind enough to come to my stepdad's service a couple weeks ago, and you were sitting with one of my buddies, and he's like, oh, I sat with one of Chris's friends, Tom, and he's run 250 or 275 marathons.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Over what kind of time period are we talking here? When did you, what year or how old were you during the first one?
Well, after I gave up running 10Ks because I was slowing down, I realized I could lop marathons. I could run long distance, and it felt so good after. I still have the memory of being crippled and being made fun of and not being able to be mobile and everything. And so I'm just so grateful that my body works. Although I'm getting slower and slower. I don't know how many marathons I got left. But it's been a good soiree. That's awesome. Yeah.
And where have you done them? I know you've traveled. Have you done...
Yeah, I've done them in different countries. I've done them in Australia, in Munich, Germany, in Spain, Iceland,
Wow.
different places.
Marathon tourism.
Yeah, I've done all 50 states.
Okay.
one in every 50 states.
Do you have like a favorite or most memorable?
New York City Marathon.
Yeah.
It's such a kind one. They're so affirming to everybody. It's so inspiring. I see people that are crippled like I was, pushing their wheelchairs backward up the Queensboro Bridge on crutches, staggering because they got problems with their limbs. It's just so inspiring. And then just all the people. What was it? Close to 50,000 or more
for this past one.
50-some thousand,
wow.
And probably a couple million spectators. There were so many spectators.
Yeah.
It's kind of intoxicating. And they're so enthusiastic and so friendly. Isn't that the way the world should be?
Yeah.
They're screaming and yelling and having a good time and being very positive and showing signs. You guys run better than the government. Yeah, stuff like that.
Keep going.
It's so positive and so nice and so affirming. But I'm getting so old, people are. I ran a marathon a couple of years ago, and I didn't realize it was hilly, so I didn't go real fast. But I told this lady who was working in the marathon at the expo when I got my number, I'm going to probably be the oldest one in your marathon. Do you think, what's your cutoff? And I said, I don't know if I can make it on your cutoff, but I'll try. Well, I didn't make it, and I was the last one, and she's standing there. Everybody else went home holding the medal and a lunch that they fed people, and she was standing there waiting for me. It was so nice. She was an older woman, and she congratulated me. I said, that's really so nice, that you just didn't go home like everybody else did.
People at their best could be very beautiful, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think marathoning brings the best out in people. It's been a good soiree.
Yeah. In your 80s, still running these things. By the way, I'm so inspired. It blows my mind that you're still doing this. Anybody that's done anything challenging, I think, is wonderful. And I strongly encourage people to do that. But would you say at this point in your life, it's more physical or mentally challenging, or both? Or what goes through your mind as you're running these races?
Well, as you get older, you get slower. And that's true of everybody. I talked to a buddy of mine who does ultras. He probably averages 30 to 50 miles in his ultras. He's 85. I'm so proud of him. Now, he has back problems. He does 3-minute miles, and I encourage him, and he encourages me. We talk about collagen, and then we talk about glucosamine control. And if you want to do a blog on that, I can talk about things that kind of heal your knees, heal your feet, and what to do not to ruin your body.
Tell me more. What's your like daily routine of supplements and vitamins?
Oh God, you want me to go?
Yeah, let's go. Glucosamine and collagen. What else?
Olive oil, because that kind of keeps your intestines from leaking. And you should take a shot glass of olive oil every day. Or look at Dr. Gundy. I think he's right about that. I don't agree with everything he says. And then take a basic vitamin and eat right. Eat a lot of fish. Collagen is very important because often our American diet doesn't have collagen. And collagen builds up your cartilages, and I need that. And also it builds up your fingernails, makes your skin, gets rid of your crepey skin and hair, and helps your hair look more vibrant. And then there's other ones. I have to get my list and tell you what each one does. I take other ones different times. Nitrates like beet juice, pineapple. That's very good for you. Stay away from the little tomatoes, strawberry tomatoes, because they got lectins. Yeah, so Yeah, basically and eat a healthy diet, a lot of fish, Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
Eat the Mediterranean.
And some olives.
Olives, yeah. Olive
Cucumbers,
oil.
onions.
Yeah. Do alternative exercises such as bicycling, swimming. Mix them up so you're using not just the same muscles all the time. Yeah. Try to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Although at the end of every marathon, nobody's enjoying it. They say, "Why am I doing this?
Never again.
Never again. This is it." And then 2 days later, what's the next one? Yeah, that's me.
It's like that. Yeah, the glory. I've not run full marathons. We have done through the trails in the woods. So we used to do this thing called the ultra hike, which was like a 25 miler in the central Pennsylvania.
Well, that's a marathon.
I mean, it took me all day. It took me 9 hours, 8 hours.
It takes me all day.
Yeah.
Now at my age, at 82, it takes me all day. I can't say it's fun the last 5 or 10 miles, but it's I feel a sense of accomplishment, And now that I've done so many, I guess it inspires some people,
Mm-hmm.
Well, have you read The Blue Zones? Everybody should read the book, The Blue Zones.
I don't think so.
They look for the people that live the longest in the world.
Yep.
And I focused in on the men, because I'm a man. And so they focused in the book about the Sardinian goat herders. And they live to over 100. There's a couple bus loads of them. And they're still herding goats, a lot of them. And I'm saying, holy Shimona, how's that possible? The moral of the story is, in the Bible it talks about God separating the sheep from the goats. Well, I go to Colorado a lot, and I see goats in the mountains, mountain goats. And they're way up on all these promontories and everything. That's the way they go places that no sheep, no cow, not even a mountain lion can get to. I've climbed over 200 mountain peaks all over the world. I get to the top of this mountain, and what do I find up there? What animal besides birds? Goats.
Yeah.
There's goats up on some of them, and I'm saying, holy cow, how did they get up here? I used a rope. I used an ice axe. For God's sakes, what are they doing? And the Sardinian guys have to get them at the end of the day and take them home because, they're going to lose the goat. Goats are ornery. They fight you. So they're not like sheep. The bottom line is, because they're goat herders, they get a ton of exercise. Because if that goat has climbed up to that promontory, you got a rock climbing, go get that damn goat with a stick and beat it down off the mountain and get back with the flock.
I think anything to do with the elevation, the up and down elevation, what's that doing to their blood?
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And also just reaching and climbing and downhills are very hard on the body, but they learn how to do it so that they don't get injured. Yeah, I used to be able to run marathon after marathon. I ran 5 marathons in 5 days in 5 states. I can't do that now. I can't run a marathon and then run another marathon the next day.
How many have you done this year?
I did only 6.
Only 6.
Yeah.
That still seems like a lot. Well,
I'm too lazy to train, so I just run marathons.
You just go right into it.
Yeah, I would run 10, 15 a year.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Have you ever done that with your children or your wife? Have they ever run with you?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
They love it. They showed up at my 80th birthday and ran a marathon.
Wow, that's great.
They don't stay with me. Dad, it's just all the fantasy. It's just all the fantasy. I could go.
You don't have the whole day.
Go. Just get out of here. And my daughter ran a marathon while I ran New York City in honor of her old farty dad. She ran, I think it was Grand Junction Marathon the same day in Colorado.
That's great.
And, yeah.
So you're convinced that one of the keys to a long, healthy life is movement, exercise.
Number one.
Yeah.
Then it's other things. It's what you eat, the toxins you get in your body, lead, plastic, the things that radiation, they affect you. We don't know. Plus, NSAIDs have killed. I am convinced. I really believe that some of my friends have died of taking NSAIDs. You know what
and
they
that's
mean.
like
Tylenol,
yeah.
Advil. They take handfuls of them, and they cause kidney problems, heart problems. If you take a lot of them, and liver problems. I'm convinced that they're very dangerous. And you'll see if you look at the detrimental. And they would take a few of them. You know, they would take gobs of them instead of taking glucosamine, which does the same thing, but pharmaceutical companies can't make any money off glucose. You should take it. Turmeric.
Oh, turmeric.
Turmeric.
Yeah.
It's as good as aspirin. I take it after every marathon. Yeah, turmeric. It helps the pain go away. It gets rid of inflammation, just like NSAIDs, but it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's a healthy thing. Yeah. Turmeric. Everybody should be taking turmeric instead of NSAIDs.
So I think we've done a good couple hours here. I think we could get close to the end. But one of the things that one question that I've asked, and this is kind of like just a fun thing. Do you have any other things that you want to talk about? Any other experiences or any other achievements that you wanted to talk about?
When I was 19, I wanted to play basketball and run track. I saw the doctor, for a physical, and he leaned over and he says, "Anybody ever told you have heart trouble?" I said, "No." He said, "You're going to a cardiologist tomorrow, and you're definitely not going to. I'm not signing you to play basketball or run track." I said, I did it before in high school. So I went to a cardiologist. He leans over after taking an EKG and all that. He says, "Has anybody ever told you you have heart trouble?" I said, "Just sign this sheet and let me go play basketball. If I drop dead, don't worry about it." He said, "You're a liability. I'm not signing that." I went to another cardiologist, same thing. I went to my father's house and I said, "They won't let me play basketball or run track." And he said, "I'll send you to my cardiologist." I said, "I didn't even know you had a cardiologist." So I went to him and I said, "Would you please sign? You saw me play basketball and run track in high school. Do you want me to examine you?" I said, "If you have to." So he did, and he says, "Same thing. Has anybody ever told you you have heart trouble?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, I ain't signing it, that's for sure." I said, "I'm not leaving your office till you sign it." He says, "Your father's going to sue me when you drop dead on the basketball court." I said, "I haven't dropped dead yet." I said, "I'm not leaving." He left the room. He was so pissed. I thought he was... Finally, he came back. He walked over to the sheet and signed it and said, "Get the hell out of my office. You're a liability. I don't want to see you again."
Should have taken it to the guy that cleared you for the military. That guy will sign off, huh?
Well, yeah, and so I did have a physical later for the military, and he didn't see anything. But most of the doctors I go to, even today, say, "You have heart trouble."
What is it specifically? Is it something with the valves or?
Well, I have a EKG that's all over the place. Heart arrhythmias. They said I had a bad mitral valve. They said my heart is twice the size of the average person. That my arteries and veins are huge. So they must be swollen from overpumping or something. I don't know. And they have a whole litany of stuff, depending on the cardiologist I go to. But I put my faith in God, and I say, God's going to take me when He wants. Well, you at least need a pacemaker. I said, "No. If absent from the body is present with the Lord, I lived a good life. I don't want to go like my mother and be an invalid and can't even move my body." I don't know if you've ever seen Parkinson's disease. It's horrifying.
Nightmare.
I'd rather just drop dead. Mm-hmm. If I drop dead tomorrow, people will say he's stupid. He didn't get a pacemaker that would have woken him back up. I'm sorry. I put my faith in God. I'm going to just die and I'll be happy as a clam.
Against all odds, you went up climbing peaks and running marathons.
It hasn't killed me yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's the one thing we all have in common, right? No, none of us are getting off this rock alive, so something's got to get you.
Yeah, the thing about it is, the reason why I got drafted is because the doctor I saw, he just didn't really do much, but he told me that I was fine and that I will be drafted. He said, "You're just trying to dodge the draft. Get out of my office." He wouldn't sign that I had heart trouble, even though I kind of mentioned it. Did I ever tell you? I didn't go into the military. I don't know.
Right, you were in school.
Yeah. I was in school. And I came in very high. I didn't finish that. I came in very high. I came in, 30 or something. And the next letter will tell you where you're supposed to report. I never got that letter. I'm still waiting for it. Don't call the...
Don't do your change of address.
Don't call me into the board there.
Want you now. Gus, you have to ask Gus next time you see him. I think he was drafted like number 1, single digits he was drafted.
Yeah.
And then he served in the Army, but he never deployed overseas. I think he was in like Yuma or somewhere out west.
Yeah. But a lot of my friends saw action, and many of them didn't come back. Yeah.
Changes people.
It's crazy. Crazy world.
It is crazy what we ask people to do.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good lead-in into the final. So one of the final questions I like to ask, if you had this magic wand and could change one thing in the world, if you could fix one problem in the world, what do you think that might be?
Well, people are falling away from God, and it breaks my heart. It makes me cry. You're either going to heaven or hell. There ain't no purgatory. I haven't found it in the Bible. I'd like to think that there's some way around it, but God is pure love. Having Christ as your Savior healed me from all that mental illness that I was struggling with, and sexual orientation stuff, and got me on the right track. I read my Bible every day, and I'd recommend it for anybody. We need a revival in America, or God's going to turn his back on us. So I'll vote for the candidate that believes in God rather than the one that doesn't. That's what I found out, because God's been awfully good to me. He's spoiled me. Look what happened to all the disciples, and look what happened to Jesus. Oh my God. When I run a marathon and it's so painful at the end, I say, this is nothing compared to what Jesus went through. And I trot to the finish line. Thanks for interviewing me, I'd love to do it again.
Yeah.
I gave lectures. I got a lot of my old lectures that I gave on TV, from current issues in social science when I taught at the college. So it was on cable. I'd love to talk about psychology. I'd love to talk about the rest of my life. There's other colorful stuff.
We got to talk about religion and how you found that. Like we should definitely do it. Maybe I'll come out and see you guys. We'll do a college trip.
There you go.
I appreciate you, Tom. Okay. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you, anybody who listened. Appreciate you guys. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.